Hi Jouko.
Oh,
Hi. You just this one is done by you, and it's just been released today in Denmark.
yes.
Could you tell me about what it is?
It's well, to put it shortly, it's a comic about comic business.
Yes.
I used to work as a comic editor for almost 15 years at the Finnish branch Egmont,
Yes.
and so this kind of like memoir of my experiences there, and of course, like the name says, a lot of that happens at the Frankfurt book fair.
Yes.
But there are also bits and pieces about other aspects of life in comics.
Okay. Yes. Early on in the book, there's a drawing of you being very unhappy, and your mother giving you a comic magazine. What happened to you when you first read a comic? Because you and I are almost the same age, and I have some remembrance of reading Tintin at the age of 6 and just being like totally gobsmacked about what is this? What happened to you when you started reading comics?
I don't remember what was exactly my first comic. Could have been Tintin or maybe Donald Duck. But I have some recollections, mostly about going to the second-hand bookshops.
Yes.
And going there, and my father first buying me old Finnish Tintin printings from the 60s, these hardcover versions, which were the first Tintin albums released in Finland. I think they came out in 61 in Finland. And they were in a special shelf at the bookshop. And we only took them, and I think they cost something like 4 marks, which was really expensive, and my father gave them to me, I think, as a birthday present.
Okay,
so I was there with him when he bought them.
So it was kind of a collector's item at that point, because
already,
it was the first print in Finnish.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, and I thought, okay, father is buying these for me, they must be okay. And of course I remember him reading them aloud to me and explaining things about Captain Haddock and so forth. But one thing that struck me, which I was scene which is portrayed here, was when my mother bought me this Finnish ruutu, which was like a Spiro or Farten Tempo.
Yeah, Farten Tempo in the English
version, with these short 2-3 page snippets of longer stories.
And the same stories that in Danish Farten Tempo were Belgian and French from the Daco and Dupree, Lombard and then those.
Yes, Spiro, Sammy Day, and stuff like that. And I think I already knew how to read at that point myself, but it was just something magical about the whole package, about the printing, the coloring, and even though I had read, I think I had the weekly Donald Duck already subscribed to me before that, but this was just a totally different experience.
Yes. Why then go forward 15-20 years and suddenly you're working in the comic industry?
Yeah.
How did that happen? And what took it from being entertainment into maybe a hobby into professional life?
Well, I have always drawn as a hobby.
Okay.
And my parents were really encouraging me to continue on that, but I never imagined I would be earning a living doing comics in any way. So it was just a hobby. And in the 80s I started drawing short stories for Finnish small press magazines, and they were published, and that was cool. Of course I didn't get any money from them, but I got some nice critiques, people liked them. And then I applied for university for the translation department.
Yes.
And at that time a friend of mine said that, why don't we start translating comics, because we were both into comics and earning a little pocket money.
Yeah, while studying.
Yeah. And he was an older guy, he had already studied Finnish language. So he said that, okay, you tell me what's in the balloons and I will phrase it in Finnish.
Okay.
And we did a couple of DC magazines for Semik, as it used to be called in Finland back then. And of course the money wasn't very good, so my friend thought that I can't be bothered doing this anymore. So then I just continued doing that, and
But you're translating stuff that's originally in English then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's my language. I mean, I know a bit of French, a bit of Swedish, but not enough to translate comics properly. But English, I mean, it was mainly DC and Marvel stuff. Even though I like all kinds of comics.
Yes.
But the French was a bit beyond me. But anyways, then I started getting more freelance jobs from Semik, and even did some lettering.
Okay.
For a while, I think I've lettered all the Calvin and Hobbes strips in Finnish 3 times for different editions. I didn't translate them, I just did the lettering.
For all of the strips?
Yeah.
But 3 times?
Yeah, because they were released in softcover albums.
Yeah.
And then these hardcover collections, which had a slightly different page size.
Oh yeah.
So they had to be relettered.
Okay.
And then they did some pocketbooks. I don't think they did all actually, but they did some strips in pocketbook format.
Okay. So you can reference every Calvin and Hobbes gag in your mind now?
No, well, fortunately, since I'm already an old man, some of the strips have vanished, but I did that for a long time. And then at the turn of the century or millennia, I was hired full-time for Waypoint and started working as an editor there.
How has all this digital stuff, what has that done to the Finnish printed market? Because it has done something to the Danish market, but talking albums in Denmark, it's like, it almost looks like the 70s. I know the number of published copies isn't the same, but the number of titles is like better than last 30 years in Denmark.
I think in Finland, during the last couple of years, the number of titles has gone down a bit, if we are talking about albums. But there are still plenty of albums being released, usually like you said, in smaller print runs. And there are a lot of small publishers.
Okay, that has their special needs.
Yeah, maybe 4 or 5 different titles every year. So they, and I think the people who run them are doing that mainly as a hobby.
Yeah, they have a full-time job on the other.
Yeah, so they see something that they want to read in Finnish, so they publish it on their own.
We had a few of those companies in Denmark as well. Not anymore, but there was particularly one guy who picked up, the 6th album in a series where the first 5 had been released in Denmark in the 80s. And then 30 years later he brought out the 6th one for all those completists. It's like, yeah,
I think more and more of that will happen in Finland as time goes by.
Yeah, because you can do much more smaller print runs nowadays.
Yeah, and nowadays it's so easy to contact the rights holders.
Yeah.
I mean, back in the day, in the 80s, 90s, I don't think if you were not working for a big company and you didn't go to the book fairs, you had basically no way of reaching French publishers.
Yes, and back then they were always probably also totally French-based in language.
Yeah.
You can actually write to them in English and get a deal done.
Yeah.
And have 200 copies printed.
Yeah.
That's what you want.
Yeah. Also that the expectations of the rights holders are probably not as high as they used to. Yeah, because of course the sales have gone down in all countries.
Yes.
Maybe not in France, but
probably in France as well. But still, they have a huge sale to go down from. So they must have something left.
Yeah.
I read an interview that you did with Normani, the Danish site, where you said that after not working full-time in the business anymore, you can actually enjoy comics again.
Oh yes, and maybe that was a bit harshly put in that interview. Of course I enjoyed comics during my work day, but it was always on the back of my mind. It was like, could this be published in Finland? Or even worse, that damn, this cannot be published in Finland.
Yeah. Some comics that are important, in your opinion? Favorites, personal favorites, or stuff that you just need to know?
I don't know. I mean, I guess Asterix, Tintin, and Lucky Luke are the ones that belong in everybody's bookshelf, not just the comic fans.
Okay.
But and of course, if you ask for my favorite comic, that varies from time to time. But I think during the last 10 years, I would usually say that if I had to pick one comic and go on a desert island with it, I would pick Cerebus by Dave Sim.
Okay.
The whole run of 300 issues. I mean, it's not perfect. There are some really low points. I don't know if you have read it, but
I haven't. No.
It starts being a bit clumsy, amateurish Conan parody, and then it moves into this really huge story which has everything: politics, philosophy, social commentary, and also adventure, magic,
okay,
and stuff like that. And then at some point, the artist-writer kind of turns really strange, and the story turns really strange, and it becomes a bit of a core to read the maybe 100 last issues. But there are really great moments there.
So it's actually a comic that has been given time to become art by the publishers. They said this will go somewhere, but
no, it was actually self-published.
Okay.
The same guy wrote and drew and published it.
Okay.
And when he started it, self-publishing was nothing in the States. He's actually Canadian, but it was really a new thing in the 80s. And he said that, okay, I will start this magazine and it will go on for 300 issues, and it will end with the main character dying.
Okay, so he had that whole plan set up from...
Yeah, I think it was probably a vague plan, but...
okay.
But he did that, and I think it came out once every month, 22 pages of story and art, so that's... all in itself, it's really impressive, but it has some really great moments.
So that's what, 25 years or something?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Oh, wow, amazing.
Yeah.
Again, what was it called?
Cerebus.
Yes, by
Dave Sim.
Okay, alright.
But I don't know, I think at some point he had this, he had made up his mind that it's not going to be translated.
Okay.
So I'm not sure whether that's true anymore, but for a long time it was only available in English.
Yeah, but I mean, these days, it's so universal these days, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, in Danish, very little American English comics gets translated. But these days, it's so little.
Yeah, it's the same in Finland actually.
Yeah.
We have Spider-Man as a monthly magazine.
Yes.
And that's pretty much it. And other favorites, of course, everything written by Alan Moore.
Okay.
Is of course very close.
Yeah.
Close to my heart. I mean, again, he has done some weird things, but most of his output has been really good. Yeah, well, you know, Alan Moore is now more or less retired. I think he said that he's not going to do any more comics at all. He will concentrate on real novels.
Yeah.
And I did read his latest novel, this thick book by the name of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And it was interesting, but it was a job to get through it.
Okay, and you hadn't finished it if there hadn't been Alan Moore?
Probably not.
Okay.
Well, usually, I mean, I really hate it if I have to leave something in the middle. It has to be really bad.
Yes.
For me to bail out or a book or
yeah, you actually find out before half time, right?
Yeah.
If you bail out, it's like 3 pages.
Or maybe 10 or 20.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, it happens occasionally.
Yeah.
With comics, it's easier. It's usually, even if the story is not so good, but if the art is nice, then you usually can.
Yeah, it's this time that you have to set aside reading a comic often. It's just an hour instead of 4 evenings with a book.
Yeah, and then you can just look at the pictures if the storyline doesn't grab you.
Thank you very much.
That went really good.
Yeah, it's like...
I thought it was like 5 minutes.
I think it's 20 minutes we've done here now.
Okay, that's great.
So thanks a lot.